Okay, so in this one, we'll talk some more about hand position and some variations, but the one I want to talk about especially today is rolling the knuckles over. And this is a position that is extremely common in the dressage world right now, or especially in the English world in general. Actually, I guess you see this in Western people too. But when you see people trying to get their horse on the bit and they don't understand what that means, and they're trying to leverage the horse's head down, this is a very common position for people who struggle with getting the horse on the bit. And I put air quotes because it's a really complex term with a very poor description. On the bit is a terrible description of what that means. But anyway, so your hands are supposed to frame your core. Okay, so when we roll the knuckles under, we drop the core. And you can see from this shirt that I'm wearing that I want all of these squares, all these checkers to be lifted and separate apart so that they would be like a nice grid, right? So if I have a nice contact where I have my thumbs on the top, like we've discussed in previous videos, my thumbs are on the top and my pinky is underneath the rein, and I have a nice support on each finger. Then I can make small actions, right? Make small actions. I'm exaggerating so you can see it would be even smaller than that. You can make small actions by bringing your elbow back. You can rotate. You can get an inside flexion. You have an you have a direct and an indirect rein if you're turning, and so on. And this is tight because I have it attached to something else, but your rein doesn't have to be that tight. I'm trying to keep the chair out of the way so you can see in this video. So if you turn your knuckles under, that inevitably is going to come with a rotational change in your center. Okay, so you can see my buttons collapse when I do that, and I get these wrinkles here. So when I get these wrinkles here, that is telling you that my ribs have dropped into my belly. And what that causes me to do is to push my seat bones either back or under, depending on the person. And it's causing me to now rely on my hand. It actually takes my core out of the picture. So if I knuckle under, now I am actually using way more of my bicep than I should be, and I'm using way less of my core than I should be. And this causes people to ride on the horse's mouth. Makes it very difficult to ride through the seat. It makes it very difficult for the horse's back to come underneath your seat. And it makes it so that your fingers are in a backward pulling action, which gives you a lot more leverage with your arm than maybe you intended to have. And so when you pick up the rein, you want to make sure, that old riding lesson that we got when we were kids, where they said, don't let the cups of hot chocolate spill. If you're holding a cup of hot chocolate, which I actually have a mug here, if you're holding your cup and your thumb is on top, then your cup of hot chocolate won't spill. But if you knuckle under, you're going to spill that coffee on your horse or hot chocolate or whatever you've got, right? So if you're leveraging with your hand in any way that is going to take your center out of position, you're going to spill what's in that cup. And when we were kids, they used to actually make us ride with cups of water and try not to spill it, right? And that was to teach you how to use your hand in conjunction with your seat. So as you go to steer, you still keep the mugs of hot chocolate centered. As you go to activate your reins to maybe come to a stop or a backup or something like that, you still keep that cup centered. If your horse is throwing their head up, that's something I get a question about all the time. How do I get my horse to stop throwing his head up? How do I get my horse on the bit? How do I get my horse to accept the contact? Well, it's a long and complex process of teaching the horse to stay under your seat, between your legs, between your reins, and then the rider's seat has to be educated enough to ride the horse to the bit. So I really can't give a simple answer of like, what do I do to get your horse on the bit? Because there's a system wherein you teach your horse the necessary parameters to get moving toward moving through onto the bit. And there's a system that teaches the rider the necessary education to be able to receive and guide that. And so it's really not as simple as just do this with your hand and the horse will go on the bit. But I can say, do not do this with your hand because the horse will not go on the bit. So this is one of those things that is easier to tell you what not to do than what to do. Like I said, it's a complex riding system that requires an education and a series of skill sets developing for the rider to be able to move the horse through the back into the hand and receive that without blocking the horse's forward energy. So if you knuckle under, then you're going to lose your ability to move your seat bones accurately. You're going to lose the ability to move the horse through the back, and it's going to make it very difficult for that horse to get through and open. And a very common side effect of this hand position is the horse is either going to try to get away upward or over curled backward. And so it's going to make it impossible for the horse to completely telescope their neck out to the bit in the way we want them to. So you can think about actually holding cups to fix this position. You can actually hold cups to hold this, to change this position. I have had riders wear wrist braces just to give them the feeling of straightening their wrist. Holding a whip straight up in the air can teach you, because if you hold that whip straight up in the air, you're gonna notice immediately if you are bending your wrist. If you've got puppy paws or knuckle over, giving yourself some sensory input to interrupt that cycle is really, really helpful. So that's something for you to think about today, is keeping your wrists straight so you can have a straight line from elbow to the horse's mouth. So straight line from elbow to bit, as opposed to interrupting that. And to take it even one step further, when you are taking the horse through the back onto the bit, for lack of a better term, when you're taking the horse over the back into the hand, you're trying to create a full circuit of energy, right? So if you create a full circuit of energy, then you have to have lines that don't interrupt. So that energy comes through your seat, through your hand, is received by the horse and retranslated through your seat, right? But if you break that circuit, if you break the circuit by cutting off that energy flow, then the horse will not be able to stay within one big circuit, and you have to artificially manufacture forward energy, or artificially manufacture that on the bit frame. You have to make the horse look like they're on the bit versus actually being through and into the hand. And that's, very much the world we live today, where you see a lot of artificial positionings of the horse, and not a lot of understanding of how to actually receive and generate energy without blocking it. So that's just something for you to think about today, is what position are your wrists and hands in, and how does that affect your center? This is just a few examples of knuckled over. This is knuckled over, creating a lot of backward action against the seat. Here's knuckled over, a lot of backward action against the seat. And then here we have the correct placement of the hand with the straight line from elbow to bit and the thumb on the top.